Welcome to FOS, a community creating space for each person to find hope, beauty, and possibility in the story of Jesus as we reimagine faith together. Over these last few weeks, we've been journeying through 1 John as we discuss what the move is from a benevolent community to a beloved community, from tolerance to embrace. And in this, we've got to witness some of the wisdom and insights that John has to call us to belovedness. As we step into today, we wrestle with one of the hardest parts of having a beloved community. Because within beloved space where everyone can belong, can find space to find hope, beauty, and possibility, we can have difficulty when someone says, actually, this doesn't work for me. And so we may want to chase and try to pull them back. We may get under this false idea that we are the only place that life flourishes, and we take away some people's agencies. In light of that, I think the beloved community calls us to give each person enough agency to be able to decide, like, this doesn't work for me, or I'm finding life here. Let's grow and let's build together. So as we go into 1 John today, I want to remind us that John, whether it was the elder or the apostle, was in the twilight of life. In other words, he was old. And this is a communal letter, which means that it was sent out to a lot of churches, not for one specific location. And it was a letter of a grandparent. So like the other epistles, there's the idea of home being built. Thus, relational language flows through the whole letter. The people are the beloved, their children, siblings, parents, young adults, and occasionally, dear little ones. You probably won't see dear little ones in many translations, because it is often in the commentaries or the footnotes of the text, where translators try to show the emotional difference between techne and paideia. The difference is important and it'll be developed later. There's a difference between a technical, like there are children around, and this is my child I care for. Since this is Grandpa John, during long debate over how we're going to understand Jesus, we can forgive his alarm and chaotic nature over the controversies which caused him to see destabilization in his community as proof that we know the last hour is now and Jesus is coming. His alarm inspired him, his passion, it was real for him. But sitting 2,000 years later, we can admit he was wrong. So notice, though, the resonance with traditional thinkers of today who say that the church is going in a negative direction, or culture is getting darker and seedier, the world is darkening, the age is coming to an end, morals have declined. Surely we now are in the last generations before Jesus. Notice how much they resonate. The grandparent of 1 John is the same as the people that are having a hard time letting go and saying, what is this future? But then 2,000 years pass, and we see that the Grandpa John, as well as the ones around today, their alarm was real, but not the best understanding of the time, because it wasn't open to the possibility of what is coming. This sort of strong emotional response is natural and good, is a part of what it means to be fully human. It shows our investment in the home that we are constructing for the growing family of faith. Home is what we are talking about when we talk about moving from benevolent to beloved. Home is what we are talking about when we use all the familiar language of dear little ones, parents, children. It's that sense of home and belonging, which is why I couldn't help but be moved by a quote that Carl sent me. And it read, "Home is not where you were born. Home is where all your attempts to escape cease. And this should never be more true than with the gathered body of believers. Home here with the body of believers, home here as a faith family, isn't something that you're born into or have to have. It's something you choose, a place where you can come fully accepted. You can cease striving and you can cease trying to escape, because you're here because we want you here, and you're here because you found home here. Because home is where you trust the people enough to be vulnerable. It's where you trust them enough to allow them to help you see what we're too blind to see ourselves, and continue growing, creating, and flourishing as a community together. It is a place of processing where we do our best to make room for each person to find that hope, beauty, and possibility. You do not age out of this process. So because the one who wrote First John is John the Elder, he's not just suddenly done with it. No matter how long you've been a part of your faith journey and tradition, you're still in the middle of the process of becoming. The elders continue to process and mature, just like the kids and new believers. The hope is you're asking better questions. The hope is that touch of maturity, that the questions you ask after 20 years is not the question you ask your first year. That me now, having been raised in church and been working in churches for 20 years, will ask better questions of inclusion, love, and embrace than I did when I was 18. Because that part of growth is what we're being called into the belovedness. When we're saying, you know what, I need to be more caring, more inclusive, more accepting of the wide expanse and beauty of what humanity is. Thus, First John is a letter that's working out the lines from 4:12, where it says, "For though we have never seen God, when we love each other, God lives in us, and his love within us grows ever stronger." It's that movement towards a mature and emotionally healthy love, bringing a little chaos because it directly affects the relationships which have understood themselves through a controlling, codependent, immature love. So as we move into this, as we're processing from young to old of what it looks like to not have seen God, to not be able to have any claim of absoluteness to say, well, I have seen, you have not. That we say we only experience and dwell within God to the degree that we have a compassionate response to each other. And that in this compassionate response, we process, we converse, we develop this growing love of God, or another way to say that, love becomes mature in us. As we mature in love, that we get to experience God more. What does a beloved community do when that growth, which if anyone's went through counseling, you understand that growth in yourself, the growth of love and maturity, leads to some tension in relationships and brings on healthy conflict? What happens then? This is exactly the question being asked in 1 John 2:18-21, where a mature love reminds the people that they are fully capable of building the beloved community themselves. John doesn't move in and try to take over. Then it allows the mature love to set boundaries. He said, this is who you are. This is how you've come to understand yourself. So you can let the people go. They don't get to ride roughshod just because we're trying to be so inclusive that everyone's there. He said, the growing faith family do not become gatekeepers, and they do not start chasing to keep people in. Because you see in 1 John, especially in this section, at no point does John say, cast them out. It's a lot different than the way Paul writes, where he says, give them over to Satan. John doesn't say it. He says, they left, and that revealed that they're not a part of us. He didn't say drive them out, didn't say force them out. He said they opted out. So they didn't become gatekeepers, but he also didn't encourage them to chase them down. He said, this is what you're doing. You're building the space of mature love and mutuality. Within healthy relationships, there's some who actually are more comfortable in the chaos. They will opt out. So he encouraged them to trust each person to make that decision. But to trust that they're going or they're coming reveals, do they find flourishing, home, and love here? So let us read 1 John 2:18-21. It says, dear children. So the language draws you in, and it's not speaking just to the class of child. He's saying, my children, my loved ones, this is the last hour. And as you've heard that the Antichrist has come, and now many Antichrists are around. From this we know that it is the last hour. You can feel his angst. He said, they went out from us, but they were not a part of us. For if they were a part of us, then they would have remained with us. But in order that it would be revealed that they were not one of us, they left. And you have the anointing from the Holy One. You know all. I do not write to you because you do not know the truth. Rather, I write because you already know it, and that anything that would be a lie or untrue does not come out of truth. Or as Carl alluded to with the idea of the way aletheia is used throughout the text, is like anything that is false or false presenting does not come out of faithfulness within the community and relationships. So listen to the gentle wisdom of Grandpa John. Even while he's caught in the middle of panic, even while he thinks it's the last hour, the end is coming, the world is nigh, he still has this gentle wisdom that trusts the young people, that says, you know what, this next generation coming in, this next one's defining, I place my trust in you. So he starts with that, dear children. Maturing means you will lose some people. He's saying some have left, so they're not a part of us. And that's some of the hardest things we can do. He said those who left were not willing to be a part of us, and that's okay. John panic has him cast them as enemies, as the Antichrist. But 2,000 years later shows his panic wasn't warranted, the end didn't come. And if you just know a little of church tradition and Christian history, this was the beginning of 300 years of this kind of debate for them to wrestle with, how do we talk about Jesus? And how does the community around understand Jesus in relationship to us? So this is those first birth pains, those first tensions and discussion, which is why I can frame it kind of passionately, just like any family fighting. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had family fighting, and when you tell the story, you're the victim, you're the one who's done nothing wrong, the other person is just this immature, evil character. I was acting in good faith, they were mean. That doesn't change just because we went 2,000 years ago. Grandpa John has some of that good family drama going. But that doesn't mean that now, when people leave us, that we need to make them into enemies. They may simply flourish in another home, and mature love allows for that. So we keep the door open. They may not even come back permanently. They might come back and you can celebrate and say, you have found life. And he goes to say that I do not write because you do not know the truth, but in essence to remind you that you already know. Again, he's not saying that I need to come and be heavy-handed. He's saying you know something, you know what you're building, you know what the family needs, and I just want to remind you you have it. So notice wisdom in these two moves from mature love and the beloved community. Grandpa John reminds the troubled community that they are family in Padilla, in dear loved ones. And it's okay if the home they are building together has boundaries. Just leave enough extra space at the table and the door open. Some people may need to get up and leave and reveal that, you know what, this wasn't a good spot for them. But they might also return with others and say, we remember the love and the life here. But it's not about control, it's about that openness. Which means that that mature love in a beloved community always leaves the door open for people to leave and hopefully return. Then John breathes strength and trust into the community and the leaders, reminding you the ones he sees as children. Because you find the older you get, the more everyone beneath you looks like kids. And you say, you know what, I believe in these next people to step up. I believe in the community and its agency. He doesn't take control. He says, I write to you to remind you that you have it. You know the truth. So wherever you're at in your spiritual journey and your understanding of God and where you're going, I speak to you, I write to you to remind you that you have it. You're in good hands understanding your journey of faith. So then mature love in a beloved community uses age and wisdom to remind the people that they have the agency to leave or to come. They were not told to simply fall in line. They were trusted to work out their salvation and what it could look like. As I said, the whole letter centers around to love each other, realizing that God lives in us as we do that. And that love within us matures and grows stronger. Which leaves me with a question. Does your love have enough vulnerable wisdom and trust to keep giving agency to the people to work out and to walk out their own faith in community, whether or not they are leaving or entering the door? Do you trust people enough to do that? Can you continue to trust them even as you feel panic, whether it's because you think change has to happen or you're thinking too much change is happening, but can you trust the people enough to say, I believe we have the agency and the wisdom to see this out? If so, Let's build. Because this is what mature love looks like in a beloved community. If we can continue to do this, then our community we are building will become a home which echoes with the words I said earlier. That our home is not where we were born. Our home is where all your attempts to escape cease. And I hope you find it here.